A very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all to the ICANN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. So, at the outset, let me tell you that in today's newspaper, there was not something that was really very important, but I have been able to collect some good points for you that you can use as examples or case studies, or mainly that is something related to your GS4 or ethics paper. So today you will mostly come across these kinds of things that you can make use of in your ethics paper. So let's start with the topics. The first topic we'll be discussing is regarding the story of Muttaya Muralidharan. So yesterday, while we were discussing about this topic, we saw a brief about the recent happenings. So recently, the Tamil actor Vijay Sethupathi has withdrawn from the movie 800, which was supposed to be a biopic of Muttaya Muralidharan, who is a legend in cricket, and he has gotten more than 800 wickets in the international Test cricket. So this movie was to celebrate the legend that Muralidharan was, but then now this actor is withdrawing from the movie. The reason being the opposition from the Tamil movie fraternity and the Tamilian politicians who have opposed this movie on the grounds that Muttaya Muralidharan did not really voice his concerns out for the Tamilians in Sri Lanka, and he kind of had uh, an opinion that was against the Tamilians or pro-government opinions. So because of this, there was opposition in Tamil Nadu, and which has made the actor now withdraw from this biopic. So the reason we are discussing this is to see how there are several inherent biases in each one of us. So if you go and see back the life of Muralidharan, he has also done a lot of philanthropic work. So when the tsunami struck in 2004, Muralidharan he mobilized resources to help build more than 1,000 homes for those people who lost their homes and livelihood in the northern part of Sri Lanka when the tsunami occurred. He took part in various other humanitarian operations as well. And in fact, when the tsunami struck, he organized and mobilized a lot of lorries, and he sent all the relief and supply materials to the people who were disaster struck. On his own, he did all that. In fact, he has himself grown in the conditions of poverty because his father and his uncle used to sell biscuits from the back of a car. So from that humble beginnings, he went on to become a legend of a cricket in the world of cricket. So he could have actually been a figure of motivation for many people to see how a person from humble beginnings, whose parents actually moved to Sri Lanka as the indentured laborers whom the British took to Sri Lanka to work in the plantations, and how he went on to become a legend in the cricket, could have actually been an inspirational story. But this also points to the inherent bias that is there in each one of us, that we tend to see the negatives of a person rather than focusing on the positive, the good things, or the achievements of a person. So we tend to forget that this whole world is full of black and white, and there are both good and bad things in every person. So we always focus on the negative things. This is what the media in the country also many times does, by highlighting just all the negative things in the country that's happening, and not highlighting enough the positive things also that are happening in the country. And this cynicism does not end just to the case just with the media. Also, it is there in each one of us. Many of us feel that the government is not doing enough, but it is quite well possible that we are also not doing enough. We are not even doing our own responsibilities. So that is also there. Always we end up blaming the government and saying that the government is not doing this and that, but we fail to appreciate what it is actually doing also. So this could be used in your GS4 paper, where you're talking about bias, inherent biases and prejudices, and the kind of stereotype and cynicism that is prevailing in the general population. So if you have a question on that, you can use this as a case study to talk about it. Now we move on to the next topic. Next topic is India-Pakistan relations, which is a part of your bilateral relations under your GS paper 2. So as the title itself says that Pakistan has made 3,800 ceasefire violations this year, that is in 2020 up till now. It has already made 3,800 ceasefire violations. So we had an agreement in 2003 that we had to prevent as much as possible any violations of the border, the ceasefire violations. So this is also a violation of the agreement that we had in 2003 about not infiltrating across the borders. So this agreement is also violated. And when you see look at the ceasefire violations that are happening, most of these also happen in the civilian areas across the border. Why is this? Because when in civilian areas, if there are any ceasefire violations happening, then the security establishment will be focusing on that particular area to seal the border. So during that time, it gets Pakistan gets a very good opportunity to infiltrate its terrorists across the border, the international border, the LAC. So this is why many of these ceasefire violations are done, and they are completely unprovoked. And the main intention for Pakistan behind this is to infiltrate terrorists across the LAC by committing such ceasefire violations. And also, what has been observed is Pakistan is increasingly using technology to also smuggle arms and narcotic substances across the international border. So it is using drones and quadcopters to smuggle the arms and narcotics. So this usage of technology is also increasing in violating the borders and then smuggling these arms and narcotics. So this particular point has also been pointed out to Pakistan at multiple levels, at various diplomatic summits that are held at various diplomatic levels. Also, it has been pointed out to Pakistan, and even at the DGMO meetings, that is the Director General of Military Operations meeting, even in such meetings, this has been pointed out repeatedly to Pakistan that such drones and quadcopters are being used to smuggle arms and narcotics across the border. But still, Pakistan has not been acknowledging this fact, and it has not taken any steps to prevent this from happening. So this is about the ceasefire violations data and why it is happening. It is to infiltrate the terrorists across the LAC, and also the increasing use of technology in violating the border, in breaching the borders, and also smuggling arms and narcotics. Now we move on to the next topic. This topic is about cybersecurity, which is a topic under your GS syllabus 3. So basically, this news is about Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, which is a very renowned laboratory that is headquartered in Hyderabad. It has several overseas branches as well. So basically, this laboratory has shut down its data center services, saying that there was a cyber attack on its systems that happened, and therefore it has shut down its systems not just in India but also in various of its overseas branches. So the most important part of part of this whole story is that Dr. Reddy's Laboratories had got a regulatory approval to conduct human trials on COVID-19 candidate vaccine that was developed in Russia. So Dr. Reddy's was to conduct human clinical trials on that COVID-19 vaccine candidate. So this shows the potential impact the cyber breach can have on various sections of the population. So today, this whole episode, in the scheme of the things that are present in the world today, the something that's disturbing and bothering the entire world is the corona pandemic. So in such cases, entire world is now just moving towards finding out a vaccine that is effective as well as safe to fight the coronavirus. So in such case, when this laboratory was about to conduct human clinical trial, and conducting such trials requires a lot of data collection to prove the efficacy and safety of the vaccine candidate. So what if all these data about the clinical trials gets breached due to a cyber attack? So it will have a huge implications, not just on the lives of several people who may be involved in the clinical trials, but also it has a huge economic impact, because a lot of economic resources are being poured into finding and researching a vaccine for the COVID-19 pandemic. So therefore, cyber security and the breach of the cyber security has a lot of implications, and this can be cited as an example about how there was a cyber attack on the Dr. Reddy Laboratories data systems. So this can be quoted as an example if you're writing an answer on cyber security and its importance. So in such cases, this can be cited as an example. Now we move on to the next topic. This topic is about emotional intelligence, which is a topic under your GS4, that is ethics paper. So many times, whenever you're asked a question on emotional intelligence, it is not just about emotional intelligence, always does not have to be in the positive sense, it can also be in the negative sense. So, even Hitler was said to be emotionally intelligent because he was able to convince and manage the emotions of a lot of people who began to share the views of Hitler about the Jews, and they supported Hitler in doing whatever he did. So, even that is a way of emotional intelligence by negatively manipulating the emotions of people. So, now recently, what has happened is, as we all know, that elections are going to happen in Bihar. So, the Bihar a political party has in its manifesto said that all the Bihar Vasis are going to be getting free COVID 19 vaccines when the vaccine will become available next year. So now this vaccination against COVID is now being given as a poll promise. So this we can say is unethical. Reason being that first of all, the entire world is now immersed in this COVID pandemic, and many of the people have a lot of fears and anxieties. People who have gotten COVID have even gone to the extent of committing suicide out of anxiety. Many people would have seen deaths in their families. In such cases where people are fear struck and are very anxious about this pandemic, using that as a poll promise and then promising free COVID 19 vaccines is like raising false expectations among the people. And also by manipulating the emotions of the people, it is like making the people to vote for a particular party by manipulating the emotions of the people, because it is well known that COVID 19 has given rise to a lot of fears and anxieties among the people. And by promising this free COVID 19 vaccine, it is like playing with these anxieties and fears of the people. So, that is nothing but playing with the emotions of the people. So, this is nothing but emotional manipulation of the people by giving this as a poll promise. So, this can be a very unethical way to promise something in the polls about something that has been like a life and a death question for people and who are very anxious and fearful about it. For that, raising false expectations in them and making false promises is unethical. So this can be used whenever you're talking about emotional intelligence. You may have a question on emotional intelligence, and the analysis about it, and it may always not be from the positive perspective, it can also be from a negative perspective. So this is what happens when emotional intelligence is used in a negative manner. So this is one such example. Now we move on to the next topic. This topic is about the role of influence, and which is again a topic under your GS syllabus 4. So, firstly, influence is something that can be had on a person from various people, be it the family, friends, colleagues, from the media, from what's happening in the country, and from what is happening elsewhere also. So, all of these will end up influencing the person, and then this influence in turn shapes the value systems and attitudes of that person. So similarly, in this case of role of influence, influence can also be had by, as I said, the media, the films and movies, and by religious institutions, because people are religious in a country like India. So if some word comes from the priest or a pope, it is going to have a lot of influence on the people. So, one such example is about Pope Francis. So, what he has said is that he has endorsed the same sex civil unions. So, basically, he has said that the same sex couples also have a right to have a family. So, they should have the right to have a family, and he has also endorsed that a legal shield should be provided to these same sex couples. So, Pope is like a very respected figure in the whole Christian world, and all of these Christians will get a very strong message now being sent by Pope Francis about the same sex couples. Many people, even including Christians and across religions, have a very negative perception about the same sex couples, and there's a lot of prejudice prevalent against them. So, this strong message that is coming out from a person who is religiously considered to be very respected person. So, if he is telling, if such a strong message is coming out from the Pope himself, then it sends out a strong message to the people, and this kind of contributes to ending that prejudice that is prevalent among the population against the same sex unions. So, this is the role that the religious institutions and influential people can play in shaping the value systems of the people in a country. So even in India, for that matter, when we say that the women are not participating much in politics, or we say that the girls are not getting educated, we always say that we must use take the help of role models and show them some of the most successful people who have gotten educated and who went on to become great personalities, so that it acts as an influence on them and they get motivated to educate their child or to give more freedom to women. So, similarly, here also it is the role that these religious institutions and the powerful personalities can play in shaping the value systems of the people in a country and to change such prejudices and biases which are prevalent in the society. So, this can be used as an example when you are talking about the role of influence and how it can shape the value systems. So, this is again a part of your GS syllabus 4. We move on to the next topic now. This topic is about health and nutrition, which is a part of your GS2 syllabus. So basically, this entire article was about the nutri-cereals, that is the coarse grains like jowar, bajra, and ragi, which are called as the millets, and the advantages that these millets have over the other crops, conventional ones like the rice and wheat, and what steps the government has taken to promote these nutri-cereals. So this is what the entire article was upon, and if I'm not wrong, if I remember it rightly, then it was in 2017 exam that there was a full-fledged question on just the advantages of millets. So this is an important topic which can be asked in a different kind of a way this year again. So when we talk of millets, again there are three more important millets, which is the ragi, jowar, and bajra. So these are the important millets, but apart from that we have a number of other micro millets as well, or the small millets like kodo, chana, sanwa, like that. We have a number of small millets as well. So now let's have a look at the advantages of millets. The first important thing is that it's a powerhouse of nutrients. So these nutrients could be macro as well as micro. So this nutrients could be calcium, zinc, magnesium, phosphorus, copper, vitamins, and a lot of antioxidants. So that is why it is very important to incorporate millets in our daily diet. The second is that the millets have also been known to reduce the disease burden. In that, the studies have shown that the consumption of millets actually has an impact on the disease burden. That is, it reduces the risk of heart disease, and it also reduces the risk of diabetes. So this is also the reason why it should be incorporated in our diets. It is reducing the disease burden, and it lowers the risk of we catching up heart diseases and diabetes. The third is the growing millets also is very easy. This can be grown by small farmers also who do not have a large piece of land. It doesn't require a lot of water also, it's not water intensive, so it can be grown even in those lands which are not so fertile and not irrigated also. So that is why growing this is easy. It is also the crop also has a short growing cycle. So these are the advantages that millets have in how they can be grown also. So that is why they can easily be grown, and particularly they require less water, and we are in the era of climate change where water stress is only going to increase in the future. In such a scenario, incorporating millets in our agri-food systems is very important if we have to make our agriculture also climate proof. And next is the micronutrients. So as we just discussed under the topic, under this point of powerhouse of nutrients, that these have a lot of micronutrients as well, like zinc, calcium, phosphorus, etc. So these micronutrients will prevent the occurrence of micronutrient deficiency among the people. When we talk of malnutrition in the Indian population, mostly this deficiency is from the micronutrients, because we eat our food which is heavily loaded with carbohydrates through rice and wheat, but we lack a lot of micronutrients which are also very important for the overall growth and development of the body and brain as well. So these micronutrients are very important, and these millets are loaded with micronutrients. So if you want to prevent micronutrients deficiency, then it's very important to incorporate millets in our diet. So next is we come to what steps have been taken by the government to promote millets in the country. First is that the millets have been rebranded. So these were earlier called as the coarse cereals, and it was always seen as a poor man's diet, but now these have been branded as nutri cereals rather than coarse cereals. So this rebranding has also contributed to more people now opting for millets. Second is the expansion. The area under the millet cultivation has also been expanded now. So it has increased to now 112 districts. The millets are being grown in the country. So the area under millet cultivation has also been expanded. The third is the MSP hike. So the MSP of these millets have also now been hiked, and compared to 2014 and before and 2020, if we see, the MSP of ragi has seen a hike of 113%, and jowar and bajra have also seen a hike of 72 and 71%. So this shows that the MSP hike will provide more incentives to the farmers to grow more millets, because they would end up getting more MSP. And fourthly, now these millets have also been incorporated into our public distribution system. So our fair price shops will also be selling these nutri cereals. So this is another way of popularizing the nutri cereals among the population. So this again is a good initiative taken by the government. Next is the farmer producer organizations. Many of the farmer producer organizations are also being promoted by the government to grow millets and also make value addition products of millets. For example, we have these millet pastries which have become very popular these days. We have millet papads. So like that, these FPOs are also being popularized and encouraged by the government to take up millet cultivation. And last is the integration. Integration means that the ministries of the government have collaborated and among themselves to promote cereals, to promote these nutri cereals. For example, the Ministry of Women and Child Development is collaborating with Ministry of Agriculture to expand the millet cultivation. Why? Because there is always an interlinkage or a correlation that is seen between crop diversity and dietary diversity. That is, if we are just growing crops like wheat and rice, then our dietary diversity will also not be there. We will just be eating roti and chawal. But if we have more diverse crops, then we also will be going for more dietary diversity, which is again very important for the holistic development of growth and for healthy development of the women also. So that is why there is this interlinkage and collaboration between the two ministries of the government, and how they are trying to integrate their programs with each other and promote the cultivation of nutri cereals, so that on the one hand agriculture is also developed through the encouragement to the millets, and on the other hand this is again used to provide micronutrients to the women and children and enable their healthy growth. So these were about the steps taken by the government to promote the nutri cereals or millets. So that is it about this topic. Today's question is, what is emotional intelligence? How will you cultivate emotional intelligence in you? So it's a 10-mark question for 150 words. So as I thought, we have practiced less number of questions on ethics. So let's take up an ethics based question this time. And about yesterday's question, which I had given on manual scavenging, as I had already told you that the RSTV Big Picture video covers the topic really well with very good way forward also. So I'm not discussing the question, so we're not doing any discussion on that further. So that material is more than sufficient, and many of you have already written great answers in the comment section. So I'll not be taking up the discussion. So these were the other articles that again were not important. UN reforms is important, but we have seen this multiple times before. We have also discussed a full-fledged question on this. Rest of the topics, they were not really important from the exam point of view. So that is it for today. Thank you.